Kier Starmer ordered the cover-up about Axel Rudy Cabana being a T because he has his own vested interest and his agenda agenda to follow. This is related to the BBC Panorama story tonight, but more importantly, it's to do with some details that I knew before, which I believe have been proved by that programme tonight. Thanks so much for watching. Please do subscribe and please do hit the bell notification icon. It's the best way to absolutely guarantee you get all of my videos as soon as they are released. Now, I've got a contact in Merseyside Police who has told me the following, that whilst it is true to say that the response by the Chief Constable was inadequate, and that was shown by what Jonathan Hall-Casey said about the response to Southport, at the same time, when the ricin was found, which was the day after the attack, and when the Al-Qaeda training manual was found the day after the attack, actually, Merseyside Police had gone to the Home Office and gone to the Prime Minister and asked for them to admit that Axel Rudy Cabana was a T and that there was now a T investigation taking place. Now, they say that Kier Starmer personally ordered for us not to talk about that and to instead defend Axel Rudy Cabana and say it was simply all to do with mental health. This is a clip from Panorama tonight. See if you think that Matt Jukes, the senior police officer, perhaps told Kier Starmer not to cover it up and was instead overruled, and Kier Starmer said, do not tell anybody about the details of the case. See what you think. Go.
4 days after the Southport attack, tests showed the substance found under Rudy Cabana's bed was the poison ricin. The day after that, as the rioting intensified, police found excerpts of an Al-Qaeda training manual on one of his computers. Ministers were told, but the public was kept in the dark for another 3 months.
Yes, I knew the details as they were emerging. That is the usual practice in a case such as this. But you know and I know that it would not have been right to disclose those details. The only losers, if the details had been disclosed, would be the victims and the families, because it ran the risk the trial would collapse.
But once again, that's disputed.
You need to be open and honest with the public at all times. Sit down and say, here was the finding of the ricin, here was the finding of the Al-Qaeda manual. Was that really going to prejudice the trial to tell the public at the time rather than several months later? The authorities don't deserve the trust from the public, they earn it. And communicating honestly about these terrible, terrible events, I think, is really important.
Why wasn't the public updated at that point? It took 3 months before that emerged.
I think I should be really clear that we're operating in a criminal justice system which, in order to protect the courtroom and its processes, in order to deliver justice for families, really locks down information about investigations when they're underway, and particularly after somebody's been arrested and charged. But I should also be clear, it's a system which, in my view, was built for a different age. And I'm absolutely certain that we need to find ways of saying more about those investigations.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious that Kier Starmer's lying. I think it's pretty obvious that he's on the back foot, that he regrets now telling the police officers concerned to lie about this incident. And what have we talked about so many times about this idea of supporting the multicultural agenda? In fact, I'm going to tell you something. I've sat on 4 juries. You know how some people get called all the time and other people never get called at all? I have a lifetime exemption, apparently, because you only have to do 2 sessions and then you are exempt. I will tell you something. No jury that I've sat on has ever been irresponsible enough to take notice of any media coverage of the case they're looking at. Now, I admit, that's only 4. But how many times, actually, has a police statement ever taken away the ability to prosecute somebody for a crime? These things happen. These things exist in theory. I don't believe it. And I believe that what happens is, obviously, the Crown Prosecution Service are overly cautious, and it's their job to be overly cautious. Sorry. You know what? What a stupid comment. They weren't overly cautious when it came to Jimmy Savile. They should have been overly cautious all the time. And I don't have a problem with that. But this was a political decision. You know, the riots were taking place and people were extremely concerned about what has taken place. Jonathan Hall, who's the inspector of tea in the United Kingdom, has talked about the fact that more information could have been released. Now, I will tell you what annoys me most of all about all of this. I don't accept for 1 minute that you can turn around and say, right, this person has been charged under the Tea Act. Yep. This person has been charged under the Biological Weapons Act. Yes. But this person has stabbed loads of children. Yes. And they cannot be considered to be a T. They've shouted a reference to the God they believe in whilst they're doing the attack, and yet we've decided that this is not T related. How can you break the Terrorism Act and not be one of those? How is it possible? I mean, it's like saying you broken the Theft Act, but you're not a thief. What? How is that sensible? You know, it's just all the time this. But I think actually this scandal gets bigger because I think for the stupidity and political correctness of the Merseyside police to start with, and I've trashed them on this channel as you well know, I'm starting to think that the Merseyside police got their act together relatively quickly. I think the blame lies higher up. I think it is Kier Starmer. I think the video that I've just showed you shows that he was the person that ordered the cover-up. He was the person that decided that we should not admit what was going on. And I think it's because he didn't want to back down politically. He wanted to say, it's the far right that's doing it. Sorry, can't do an impersonation of him. In fact, that was far from an impersonation. But he wants to say, it's the far right. The minute that the Tea Act has been breached, it's not the far right anymore. It's concerned people telling the truth. And I'll be honest with you. Look, attacking a mosque is a dreadful thing to do. But in general, the anger of the public, I think, was justified. Did they have every detail right? No, they didn't. Should they be given more information? Yes, they should. But actually, fundamentally, this idea that our society, our community is being fractured by uncontrolled immigration was right. I made an earlier video before where I said that machete culture is part of Rwandan culture. Well, clearly there were machetes in the house. So I think that demonstrates something. I think that demonstrates that we have been culturally enriched with machete culture. And I think it's time now that Kier Starmer came clean and was honest for once in his life, because he's a very dishonest man. You know, the whole relationship with the wife, the whole living in Lord Ali's flat, the level of dishonesty from this man is unbelievable. How do I say this politely? The reason he's always got a red nose on camera. You know, all of these things, the lies and deceit and dishonesty of this man is staggering. And now it's time for some honesty. You know, Southport was ripped in half as a community because of the dishonesty of Kier Starmer and the uncontrolled immigration of his Labour predecessor and Conservative predecessors. It's time that we stopped. It's time we told the truth. It's time things changed quite significantly. I also just want to say tonight about the politically correct people that have destroyed this country. I hope that everybody is safe in Cornwall after the disgraceful attack by the far left on the Reform UK conference. My understanding is that there wasn't any serious harm done, but nonetheless, what we are going to see now is something that we're not willing to talk about and will never admit: left-wing teas. I wonder how many of them are knocking about, because I personally think that throwing yoghurt in somebody's face, throwing rocks at Nigel Farage makes you a tea, and I would lock these people up for a significant amount of time. The reason I say that is because whilst it's difficult to debate, it's difficult to know exactly what a T is. I think that when you attempt to exercise a veto of one, that is to say that I'm going to stop you speaking politically because I don't like what you say, I think that makes you a T. Now, whether it's a yoghurt or Semtex, it does make a difference which one of it is, but it doesn't stop both of them from being an attempt to subvert and disgrace and damage democracy by your personal veto. It's a symbol of narcissism. Until next time, arrivederci and goodbye.